Hello again, good people of the internet. This is Austin Burns here.
And I'm here to tell you the story of what I did after graduate school.
When I graduated, I really had no idea how to make it as a musician. It seemed like there was really no playbook for where to go now. Just a little background information on me. For my undergraduate degree, I went to LaGrange College, and for my graduate degree, I went to New England Conservatory in Boston. My graduate degree was in vocal performance. And so after I graduated, I was asking a lot of my professors what to do now. For 2 years in graduate school, I had been studying opera, so naturally when I was asking them what to do, they were giving me all of these programs to try out for. A lot of these summer programs were basically pay to sings, which means that you pay some company to allow you, who are now a professional, to sing in an opera. Sounds a little crazy, doesn't it? It is. So I decided I wasn't going to go that route. I opted instead for getting paid to do what I just got a degree for. My first thought was, oh, of course, I'll just do some teaching until I really get my gigs going. Teaching should be really easy. I mean, I've got a master's degree now. Who wouldn't hire me? Everyone. So the bad news is, if you don't have a teaching degree, there are very few places that you can actually teach. Since I had no degree in teaching and I did not have a teaching certification, I had to stick with the private sector. These independent music schools are great, but they are very, very part-time. As in, they might want you to work 3 hours a week for $30 an hour, and you have to drive an hour to get there. I think at my height, I had about 4 jobs, and it was crazy. I was driving all over creation, and I was bringing in pennies. But at least I wasn't paying to be in an opera. Also, I did get a recurring gig at a restaurant not long after I graduated. So I got a job at a sandwich shop called Potbelly. They actually have live music during their lunch hour from 12 to 2, and sometimes during their dinner hour from maybe 4 to 6. So I would do these 2-hour pop gigs, and then I would carry my guitar off to another location and do another 2-hour gig. So some days I was singing for 4 hours. And you know, it felt pretty good with my skills of 4-hour singing days. But eventually that got pretty old, about as old as all of the teaching jobs. So slowly you start to quit this job or that job when something else comes up. For me, that was my choir job. I started working at First Parish in Lexington, which was really a great experience. And then after that, I was able to quit a lot of these part-time jobs, and I was able to pick up a lot of students from the choir there that wanted to take independent lessons with me. Now, the several years that all of this is going on, I'm also trying to build up my gig repertoire. So as an artist that's kind of unknown, what I decide to do is create programs that are themed around seasonal events so that they'll kind of sell themselves. They'll be very easy to promote. I ended up coming up with a all-Irish program, an all-American program, a Neapolitan program, a 3 tenors tribute, a jazz program, and so on and so forth, about 12 different programs. Now you're thinking, okay, great, you got all this repertoire. Now, where are you going to take it? A lot of musicians try bars and clubs, but for me, being a classical musician, that didn't really work. So what I ended up deciding to do was actually kind of odd. When I was in undergrad, I volunteered a lot for retirement communities. It was a very rewarding experience, and they were an incredible audience. They were very appreciative, but I never really thought about it as a way to make money. Once I got out of graduate school, I really liked the idea of working with that community again, but of course I was in desperate need of money. So then I started looking at a lot of retirement communities in wealthier areas that are able to pay for musicians. This ended up really being a gold mine for me. So I made large lists of all these different places, and I would call, I would email maybe once a week, and it would take about 4 to 7 times, maybe even more, before you start to get a decent response from these places. And of course, nothing happens overnight. It takes several years to build kind of a core of dependable places that you can get gigs with over and over. One thing that I did learn with booking these gigs is once you're really well liked and you've tried it out at some of these locations, really try to book several gigs at once. A lot of these places ended up booking every other month for a whole year. So 6 gigs from this one location. It makes booking so much easier. Instead of looking at one location as 1 gig, look at one location as a potential of 3 to 6 gigs. That makes your life so much easier. So now we're pretty much up to the present. Where I am now, I was just able to quit my choir job in Lexington. I needed to focus more on my gigs, and now I've just gotten offered a choir director position at a local church. I'm doing about 8 to 12 gigs a month now. Most are with retirement communities. I've also started adding in gigs with various venues such as historic houses, libraries, art galleries, and much more. When I started out with doing my gigs, I also did a lot of house parties, especially through the site Group Muse, which is really great for classical musicians. Now, you don't make a great deal of money by doing these types of gigs, but it's really great to build up your email list. I'm also organizing a tour down the East Coast of the US and putting the final touches on my debut album. What I'm really hoping to say with this whole video is that you've got to manage your expectations. Things aren't going to happen for you all at once. It takes some time to build up communities, gigs, and also a variety of jobs. Unfortunately, as a musician, you're probably not going to get that one job that most people have. But that's okay, and the flexibility of having multiple jobs means that you can also start building up your gigs. However, this is all to say this is my personal experience as a classically trained vocalist. Now, I have a lot of friends that are classical guitarists that when they go to their teaching jobs, they have, 12 students or something. And the same thing seems to be true for pianists. I think there's just a lot more interest in learning a physical instrument instead of learning how to sing. A lot of people tend to think, well, anybody can sing, so it's not really a skill. Obviously, that's not true, but it seems to be the perception that's out there. For you, maybe you can get a full-time teaching job. Or maybe if you're a pianist or an organist, you can get a full-time job or a really good part-time job at a church right away. For me, I had to go through a lot of small positions as a tenor section leader before I got there. Also, I'm not part of an ensemble. A lot of times if musicians decide, oh well, being in an orchestra is not for me, they decide to be chamber musicians and they form a small ensemble and they work with them on a close basis. I end up working with a lot of different musicians, but I've arranged the music that I perform so that I can do it independently, because I've found that I can make a lot more money as a solo artist accompanying myself than I can if I have partners. That's certainly not true with all kinds of music. There are a lot of jazz musicians I know that perform as part of a big band, and they get a pretty good payday out of that. Being a musician, there's no one size fits all. This is my personal story. There's a lot of things that you can do, but it's good to know what's out there. Now I really want to hear from you. Have you graduated with a bachelor's or a master's degree in music? What did you do when you first graduated? Was your experience similar, or did you get that wonderful job right off the bat? Finally, if you're just graduating from high school and you're pursuing a degree in music, or you're about to, please feel free to leave any comments or questions below. I'd love to help you out, and I'd love to have a conversation with you. It's definitely something worth doing, but you have to consider if it's the right thing for you, because it's not for everybody. Don't forget to like if you like, and subscribe. If you want to help out, my Patreon page exists, so you can give if you feel like it.